Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Rich Revolutionaries podcast. Today, we are joined by another very special guest and soul sister, Irene Diez. Introduce yourself, your magic, what you do in the world to the listener.
Hmm. Thank you for having me, first of all. Oh, I wear many hats at the moment. I am a mom. I co-own a dojo, martial arts academy with my partner, where I teach some movement modalities. And I'm also, I'm a trained graphic designer turned branding alchemist. So that means I translate the let's say the soul of the person into how to bring that into the brand, like the typical, let's call it typical, into a brand form. So I help them connect with the spirit of their brand so they can, you know, land what's needed for them to express into the world and fulfill their soul mission.
Yeah, and you do so magically. I've had the honor of witnessing not one, but two Soulscape branding sessions with Irene. One was a group session in our collaborative light language summit that is coming out in the spring of 2026. You've heard a few of us from the council here talk about that one. And I want to give the listeners a bit more details because you're very modest in the way you share. So I'm going to pull it out of you. What Irene does in these soulscape sessions is opening a portal to the multiverse for you to commune with the different guides that represent archetypal energies and listen to not only the imagery, the sound, the words, but the energetic undercurrent of how your brand wants to come to life through all of those things, the message, the imagery, the colors. And when you get the pleasure and honor of experiencing this session, not only do you get a full soulscape of your brand, which includes a full report of how to decode what came through in these sessions because it's so multi-layered. When I experienced it, I had a full like organ frequency purge, and this doesn't happen to everyone, but because I'm super blasted open to the ethers, for me, like the activation sunk into a cellular level. And it wasn't just about, okay, I'm doing branding to like have pretty graphics and like sell this thing. The deeper layer of what's going on in your offer is that you are offering a frequency calibration to embody more of that meeting place, which is the cornerstone of alchemy, right? Of there's this entity that is your brand, there's an entity that is you, and when you come together, what is that third thing that gets created? So I could spiel on and on and on about
I'm so
your
happy to
work
hear you because you
forever.
see it so well. You explain
But
it
I
much
want to
better than me.
hear your your perspective on that process and kind of what it's like for you as a guide in session and then post session. And like, let's go into the layers here.
Okay. So what I bring to the session moment is, in a way, I've been told that I'm also holding a sacred mirror, because what I am trying to do is to just I'm guiding the person, but it's not, it's more like gently nudging them to experience their own vision.
Mm,
So when, as you say, when we enter that portal, I want them to feel comfortable enough to explore a part of them they don't know yet.
mm,
Because first we enter like, and that's why I called it soulscape, because it's like a landscape. It's not always like a natural landscape. Sometimes it's a room, but it's a landscape. And in that, so that is first like their brand universe. When they enter that space, there's obviously a lived experience in their body and in their senses. And that's very important because post session, they need, or how I see it is like, okay, you've had this experience and this is what your brand and you want to translate to the people that are going to experience your service. So that's your brand experience first lived in your body.
mm,
And then once they get familiar with that space, we call upon that brand guide, which is like a separate entity. And it's, like a guardian angel, but as your brand. And he's there
mhm,
to support you. And then when we meet that entity, which can have many forms or no form, but it will, clear, give some clarity and some guidance, then it's just like post session, we can get, every time we recall, we can get that, we get back to that space. And every time we return to that memory, we can get more detail. It's like remembering something we've experienced. Sometimes, oh, I remember, oh, I've forgotten about that detail. And then every time you remember your soulscape session, you can get more details and also re-experience it, which is the cool part for me, because then you don't really need me to go back there, because you've been there before. It's like remembering when you went to your grandparents' house and that house yet doesn't exist anymore, but you can go there anytime you want because you have all
mhm,
those memories, right? And you remember how you felt when you went there. You can, you remember how your grandparents or how whoever, I always say that you can get to know a person when you get in their house, because you see
mhm,
what they have, you see what they store, the colors in the walls, or even if you go just to their garden, because the choices they make, they
mhm,
shape who, their experience and who they are. And it's the same, you enter your brand universe and it's like, oh, okay, this looks like a very bright room. And so you get a lot of information, sensory information, that makes you feel in a certain way. And when you meet the
mhm,
brand entity, you again get all that sensory information that makes you feel a certain way. And then you
mhm,
have to translate all that into your brand experience. Because if you felt really, I don't know, if you felt like your brand entity is super bold and even a little bit of rebel, and you're out there saying, everything is pink and it's super angelic, and there's no boldness and there's no rebellion in there, there's like a short circuit there, because
yes.
your brand wants to say something and you're like, no, 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 I'm saying something else, and that's a dissonance.
Mhm. And
So
that's
it's,
so felt.
and this is felt subconsciously by the people that follow you, you
Mhm.
know? It's like if you go, you find this beautiful building, very luxurious, and when you get inside, it's full of trash. You're like, oh, and I'm exaggerating a
Who owns
lot,
this
but it's
place?
like, oh, this is not what I expected. Because I
Mm,
was expecting, full lamps, I don't know, velvet and all that stuff. And now what I find is like, oh, all plastic.
mhm,
And even though it's very subconscious sometimes, we're sending this non-coherent messaging to our audience, and they're
mhm.
feeling that. And sometimes that might just, put a wall between you and them.
Yeah.
So sometimes, well, I would say half of the time when we enter a soulscape session, this a lot of like fogginess about what the brand really is. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people get like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
because most of the time we think we have to create the brand,
Mm-hmm.
where from my now point of view, is your brand is calling you forward and asking you to transform yourself. So it's you that you have to change your identity to be
Yes.
able to express that mission. And we all have a
Mm-hmm.
mission. We might be more aware or less aware of our mission, but everyone has one. Everyone has a goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. There's a few things I want to like riff off of that.
Okay.
So, one, the thing that's so unique about your approach is I see it like as informed by your experience as a space holder in more of the movement world, where we're curating this environment for people to deepen into their sensory experience and into their connection with their soul. And I really see that like golden thread of how that translates into your offer. And you're not the type of mentor that's here saying like, okay, do this, do that to get
No.
X result. You're like, no, 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 no. We're like opening to orient to what is here and how we can become that hollow bone vessel and steward of the brand, because it's not about us, it's about that
Exactly.
mission. And for most of us, it has this thread of evolving the collective, of allowing for some of those layers that make us want to revert to the soft pink branding that a lot of us like come into
Give
those
me the blue pill
space
again.
with. Pardon, what?
Give me the blue pill again.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like red pill, blue pill. Do you want to like keep going in the way that you've known everything as it is, or do you want to jump into the multiverse, into the unknown, and explore the richness and the textures and the colors and the vastness of what is available to us there? And then in a session, there's that space holding that allows people to create, or rather connect with, an embodied reference point.
Mhm.
And I think that is something that's so undervalued and underspoken about. Because when we're creating anything in the world, we're creating it from our nervous system. And our nervous system can't create what it does not know with
Yes.
specific sensory information. This is when we go into this place of analysis paralysis, into overthinking, into imposter syndrome, into self-doubt, because our nervous system is trying to create something. It's like, I don't know, like, what do you want from me? So, in this space holding, you're creating this embodied reference point to very specifically create a pathway that people get to come back to over and over in their process, be that content creation, the branding, be that creating the container that actually is going to bring the brand to life, and all the way through to the delivery. I think that like when we're looking at branding from what you probably would have learned in your design background, it's like really like 1% tip of the iceberg at the surface.
Yeah.
But what you're proposing here is the full spectrum that has roots deep into the collective unconscious, which is where the archetypal realm exists. And I'm going to prompt you to get into that in a moment.
Okay.
But the last thing I wanted to
It's that got a
riff
lot to say
on
about that.
here, yes, I know. We're both big fans of Jungian psychology, so we're
Yeah.
definitely going to nerd out on that in a moment. Um, but what you're saying is like your brand wants to create through you.
Mhm.
And to me, that is an initiation, right? Where your identity is shifting, where your leadership is deepening and evolving, where your embodied frequency is calibrating to this new entity, quite like the initiation of motherhood, right?
Mhm.
Where first, in our maiden era, it's about us, it's about what we want, it's about what we desire, it's about like creating that landscape that is serving us. But then when we come into motherhood, when we come into branding from this deepened perspective, it's not about us. And so, how do we calibrate? In ancient times, there were rites of passage, there was community to hold this evolution. Because when we're shifting identities, like, this gets thrown around as a buzzword everywhere in the online business space, but it's not this like fluffy thing.
No,
It's
not at
literally a
all.
crack in your psyche. It's a spiritual initiation. It's a process of emotional alchemy and orienting to a new embodied reference point. And I'm gonna plug myself a little bit here.
Go ahead.
I just dropped a Black Friday offer called Initiation, which is
Mhm.
all about this. And I just kind of got bored about the conversation around strategy. Like it's more the same, different levels. But like what really excites me and lights me up is that collaborative, co-creative field that we create when we're moving through these rites of passage together,
Mhm.
when we're holding each other's vision, when we're weaving this tapestry of a new reality and inviting other people to come play with us in that brand universe. So that is out. And it'll be something that becomes like a flagship offer. So it'll be available periodically. So I wanted to drop that in
Cool.
there. Before I give the floor back to you I said a lot of things. You can riff on any of it from your background in space holding to the archetypal unconscious and different rites of passage or initiation that you've experienced. So all's yours.
Yeah, like being a space holder is something that I've learned to appreciate much more with time, but it was great to have this practice completely out of branding, because what I learned from just being a yoga teacher in the lineage that I come from, which is completely unorthodox,
Mhm. And what
because what
lineage
I
is
teach,
that?
what I teach free flow yoga really.
Oh, mhm.
And what that means is like, and sometimes it's interesting because people go a little bit crazy in my classes because I give so many options, like you could do this, you could do that. But
Yeah.
and what I do is like always remind them I am not I'm not a point of reference.
Mm.
In the normal sense of point of reference, of course, I am just like giving you instruction in the sense of well, this is what I propose today that we do together,
Mhm.
but this is an individual practice.
Yeah. Then it gets to become a playful exploration instead of
Exactly.
like a
So we are
rigid, like,
having
you must do this. Everybody
exactly
do the same
just
thing,
like,
breathe at the same time.
and that disconnects completely. Disconnects the person from their own experience.
Hmm.
So the whole thing about yoga, I'm going to get a little bit spicy here,
Do it, do
is
it.
union. So we are trying to unite. I'm going to leave the spirit away, the mind to the body. But I find so focused on doing what they're telling me want to do, but not really analyzing what's happening in my body and feeling and sensing, is this okay for my body to be here? What am I,
Mm-hmm.
what am I yoking? I'm not
Yes.
yoking anything because I'm like, okay, my head is completely in that person. I have even to check what they're doing just to check
Mm-hmm.
if my body is doing the same thing. And when it's not the same thing, I get frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, does this feel good? Is it
Mm-hmm.
okay for my body to be here? If it's not, how can I make it feel better? You
Mm-hmm.
know? Because what we are doing is incarcerating bodies in yoga
Ooh,
poses.
yeah.
And it's what we're doing.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That was some feedback that I always got from my students. I was a yoga teacher also for like 4 years, I think. And it was like, wow, like I've never felt so much freedom of choice in a yoga class before. I've had people like cry and say they've never
Mm,
felt like safe and connected to themselves. And even like I taught a variety of styles from like vinyasa to yin.
mm.
And even in the yin space, a lot of the norm is like, okay, get into the pose and like suffer in the pose for 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I'm
like,
like,
and what does it serve?
exactly. Yeah. So I love to give that um embodied feedback of how to listen to your body, like how to get into the layers of sensation and ease people into that process. Because if you're running
Exactly.
around every day, like up here and like up here, and then someone sits you down and is like, okay, stay still and listen to the sensations in your body, that's going to be overwhelming for the system. And so, how can we create like this process of deepening? So, yeah, I love that you bring that forward too.
Yeah, it's like, and I've been teaching for 11 years now.
Wow.
And but I find myself teaching more and more basic classes instead
Mm-hmm.
of, kind of getting people into super complicated things. Because first of all, we don't practice that much that. And I love functional movement. And if
Mm-hmm.
someone cannot lift their arm over their, and over their head and put their arm behind their ear, it doesn't matter that they can do a handstand or because it's like, okay, but when you're 80 or when you're 70 or when you're 60, if you cannot reach, a cup in your own cupboard, what does it matter that you did this and that pose?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I find myself educating a little bit more, and I hate the word educating, but it's just like opening. Okay, I'd rather say it this way:
Mm-hmm.
opening their awareness,
Mm-hmm.
to how and why they're moving. Why are
Mm-hmm.
you moving in the way you're moving?
Mm-hmm.
As in, like,
Yeah, like
why are
what's the
you
purpose of
forcing
this
your body? What
pose?
what is your goal in forcing your body doing something? Why would you go to the top of the staircase instead of, take one step at a time?
Hmm.
And all these
Yeah.
things is super interesting to me that no one no I find not that there's not that much people paying attention to these and then taking it out the practice and into their life.
Yeah. That's
And
the
the
whole
way
purpose of yoga, right? Is off
exactly,
the
and the way
mat.
you do one thing is the way you do everything,
Hmm.
which hurts so much to hear. Because then it's like when you find yourself doing something like, oh, ooh, am I doing this where else?
Hmm.
But that's exactly as you said, that's the whole purpose of yoga. Like yoga is not just what you do in your yoga mat. It's actually
Hmm.
that's just the 1%.
Yeah, exactly.
It's everything else. It's like meditation. Like if you go meditate in the top of a mountain with no one else, just like this, that's not, the purpose of meditation. You know,
Hmm.
that's
Yeah, I
easy.
was actually in a yoga class this morning where the teacher said that She'd heard from one of her teachers at some point, the best place to meditate is in a chaotic environment because
Because that's
then
when
you can
you're actually going to test
really,
your skill. And it's actually when
exactly,
you need it most. Because
exactly.
if you're stuck in traffic for 20 minutes and you're, vomiting fire out your mouth and you cannot connect back to that, like, oh, okay, I'm here. This sucks quite a lot, but I'm
Mhm.
still okay.
Yeah.
We're
I think
meditating then.
those moments like in traffic or waiting in line or if your child is losing their mind in the superstore, the grocery store, that is why we practice, and we can translate this, everything that we just said, back into our business branding world. It's like
Exactly.
orienting to, okay, there's so many things going on. There's so much information of people that are selling like $1 million strategies in a million different angles and saying that you need this to be successful. That's a chaotic environment. How can we
Hmm.
come back, create that pathway to the embodied reference point of, okay, what's my brand? What is my unique way of expressing my mission in this very chaotic landscape?
Yeah,
And
then you return to your GPS.
yeah, exactly. And I keep looking at the door behind you, and like what we're doing is really like opening doors of awareness, opening the doors of the senses. Okay, I want to like direct the conversation to opening the door of the collective unconscious. And I want to hear your your experience with creating that pathway, both in yourself and then with your clients to access the archetypal realm.
This is twofold in my world because that
Yeah.
was the archetypes were the actual light bulb moment where I had that connected everything for me, like because I felt so scattered at a point in my life where I was like, okay, I'm doing yoga. I At that moment in time, at one moment in time, I was doing creative cocktail making, and I'm a graphic designer, and I'm do this and I do this, and I'm like, okay, what is the thread that is
Uh-huh.
that's going on in here, and I was already working with archetypes and branding.
Mm.
The thing is, like, I was not telling anybody that I was using archetypes, anybody as in my clients, because I didn't want them to start controlling that.
Ooh, okay.
That's the
Mhm.
thing, because again, we go back to I want to control the color palette. So I want to choose my color palette. I want to choose my logo. I want to choose my fonts. I want to choose, and I also want to choose my archetypes.
Yeah. It's also like I want to control my body. I want to control my productivity. I want to control my output.
Exactly. So what I was doing was, modifying my designer brief to get the information that I needed, and then I like putting pieces together. And I'm like, okay, this connects with this kind of archetype. And then I
Mm.
was using that information, to bring back a brand that connected with that archetype in a subtle level. But I wasn't telling them, your brand is the magician archetype or is the jester archetype or is the sage archetype, because then it all comes back to again the mind, and I have to, and it turns into a box again,
Hmm.
and into a jail. And I was listening in my second year of Ayurveda school. I was listening to this to the main teacher um, talk about how the doshas are also archetypes. And
Mm-hmm.
then I did like, what? Wait a minute. Shoot. It makes sense, there's archetypes everywhere. And I keep finding myself in this as like, I keep forgetting that everything is connected. And then I saw, I guess, oh, okay. I can bring Ayurveda as well into the branding because there's a psycho-emotional aspect in Ayurveda,
Mm-hmm.
that's very important because we don't just look at the body as the physical flesh and bone body. We look at all the layers. And the
Mm-hmm.
subtle layers are super important because everything, expresses out the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was looking at the psycho-emotional body through the archetypes, I could connect the doshas to the Jungian archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this like download or whatever. I don't know. I don't even know how to call it, but it was like, wow, then it makes a lot of sense if a brand is this dosha and the person is this dosha. And if they are imbalancing each other, then burnout happens or
Mm-hmm.
stagnation happens. Or, I was like, we can balance each other. And it happens
Mm-hmm.
in my own brand. Like I am a Vata Pitta, very clear. And my brand is a very Vata Pitta brand, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
I have to be constantly like grounding Irene and grounding my brand. Because
Mm-hmm.
if I keep everything in the word, in the you know, and in all this mind space, ethereal space that I love, it's just gonna fly out. And I have
Mm-hmm.
to ground it and I have to like, keep coming back to the simple things, the more embodied expression of what branding really is, and bring all these aspects so we don't, so I don't burn out and I also don't go in the theory in
Mm-hmm.
theory land, and I don't go the philosopher way, because I can philosophize all day about branding and young and on whatever. I can
Uh,
talk all day. I love it.
That's the
But
beauty
there's a
of
moment where
having
it's
a
like, "Okay,
space
we need
like
to land it."
this, right? Like having
Mhm.
a podcast space where you can philosophize and like have other people that are like into it too. So that has an outlet too. And then when you're in like, business branding world,
Mm.
then you get to like be in that more grounded space. That's why I created this
So give me ideas.
podcast, right? I have
It's
an
just like,
offer
"Oh,
for
I need
that
to talk
one
to all my
too.
clients."
um, yeah, it's why I created this podcast because my favorite place to hang out is having these depth conversations when we really get into the nuance of both the philosophy, the psychology, and the personal experiences that have created the brand, that have created the business, that have created the movement. And we just can't do that in 90 seconds reel or
Yeah.
a minute story or, a carousel post. There's so many slides that can fit in there, even like a 90-minute master class. These are just like snapshots. And so here my intention really is to give that space to the people that I love to be able to like create these worlds together that can go into the heights of the ethers and then like really like
And then back.
dive deep into the underground of the psyche too and bridge those worlds for people that are curious to know more than what's available on the surface.
Mm. Yeah, and you do that so well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mm. I want to share a little bit about my doshas with you, and
Okay.
maybe we can do like a little bit of like a mock like experience so that people can get a feel of how to balance the archetypes in branding.
Okay.
Um, so m- my uh Vakriti is like your baseline, right?
Your Prakriti.
Prakriti, and then Vakriti is the environmental influence, right?
Vikriti, yeah.
Okay. So my Prakriti is Kapha Pitta, okay,
Okay.
but my Vikriti is usually Pitta Vata. So knowing that and what you've experienced of my different brands with my offers, like what kind of um guidance would you point me towards?
Mm. Okay, for a general like kind of advice,
Hmm.
when it's easy to because the beauty of Ayurveda is that it's very intuitive. So Pitta is a fire element, mostly it's fire water, but is mostly fire, whereas kapha is also water, but it's mostly earth,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what happens when there's too much earth is that we get slow, sluggish, but at the same time, it's very nurturing, very embracing, very space holding. Yeah. Pitta is a lot in the mind as well because they're great. They're super sharp. They see all the patterns. Is very is like the fire, sharp in every aspect. Is bright in the sense of illuminating. You cannot if a Pitta person is very balanced, like there's no way you can bullshit them. No way. See through. They see through. So an Vata person or the Vata dosha is also very in the mind and very creative. There, it's a very visionary kind of energy. It's a little bit of a like people that's 3 steps ahead, and you're talking to them, and they're already like 3 lines ahead of the conversation. And that's a Vata imbalance. When someone is like, oh, and you see someone is like, but you're responding to a question that I haven't asked yet. So Ayurveda works with like increases like. So if something is fiery and we put more fire on, we're just gonna make the fire bigger. If something is very vata, very airy, it's gonna get more airy. And so to balance, we have to go for opposites. And when we notice, um, for example, Pitta has a tendency, when in balance, to connect to anger, for example, or gets irritable. Anything that looks inflammatory is Pitta. To bring that down, it needs a little bit of vata and a little bit of kapha,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if it's a lot of vata, if you blow a fire, you can increase it. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So the air has to be, either a lot, which can be a little too much in order to put it off, or bring the earth to calm it down. So it's a little balance, So it's a subtle mix of those, but mostly with the kapha. So when there's a vata, the thing is like how the imbalance is presented. And so you said you are kapha pitta, but this pitta vata imbalance. So you have to look at your pitta mostly because
Mm-hmm.
that's in both, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in your nature and in your imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to bring a little bit more kapha in your imbalance to
Mm-hmm.
both balance the pitta and the vata. Why? Because there's a vata. If the vata is involved in the imbalance, is probably making the fire bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So then
So,
you need more kapha. So you need more grounding, more like instead of using a lot of the computer, whatever you can do, pen on paper is much better. Um, like increases like there's nothing more rooting than a carrot, a potato, a sweet potato, a yam, this kind of things. So it's like, okay, what feels earthy to me?
mm-hmm.
And sometimes that might even be very personal.
Mm-hmm.
But something that feels grounding for me is always like oiling my feet.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can show the people where I am right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like just
Out
go like a
in
tree
the forest.
and,
Um,
release
yeah.
your everything. So when
Mm-hmm.
when you're like in your offers, I feel there's a lot of kapha in there because you're a space holder
Mm-hmm.
as well. But I see the pita that, you cut to the chase. It's like, whoa, you know and also, but it's a great thing is like you're not beating around the bush like I would do. As a Vata. It's just like I like the detours, because I like that
Mm-hmm.
poetry, and you're super like targeted, that's very Vata. Everything is has the pros and their cons, you know. It's like it's not that it's better be to be one thing or the other. Everything has its beauty, and that's why they exist like that. So,
Mm,
but when the pita is very intense, it gets intense, it can get a little bit
your whole life blows up?
say that.
So your whole life blows up?
Yeah, no, but when your pita is imbalanced and and you're guiding someone, you can get a little bit like it has to be this way, so you can get a little bit rigid, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to and in vata, for example, an imbalance can be like too many options,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and not, you know, not containing that, being
Mm-hmm.
too spacey, you know, giving
Yeah,
like, and it's happened to me in class, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna get that many options because, you know, people tend to spread, they you spread them out.
yeah. If we're thinking of this from like a business structural perspective too, like you can see that like sometimes people will have, I don't know, like 15 different offers and no clear through line of how
Mhm.
people enter the ecosystem, where they're going in the ecosystem. And then, the other extreme of that is there's like rigid offers and there's no space for customization. Um,
Exactly.
and so like I can really see how this knowledge, this perspective has so many different levels of application from business structure to branding. And then I want to bring it into a little bit more of kind of like the bridging with the archetypes and graphic design of how to like pacify doshas with that. Because we've talked about more of the leadership, the space holding, the lifestyle aspects and nutrition. And I want to hear more of those applications. I know that's one of your zones of genius.
So sometimes, and it's happened to me, when we want to choose the color palette, for example, we might be throwing ourselves out of balance as well. So let's say if you're a PETA and you're always wearing red and orange, you're gonna heat up yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's always that, also that layer of pacifying and balancing. And it's
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that if you're a PETA you cannot use red. But that will mean that you're gonna have to balance it with something else that brings the red a little. And there's plenty of shades of red that you can use, and you can go for a colder shade, you know,
Mm-hmm.
instead of a more like heat. Like think, um, yeah, think of those red that have a little bit of a deeper red that has a little bit of blue in it,
Mm-hmm.
where like in contrast with like a McDonald's red,
Yeah.
which is very like fiery, very
Yeah.
bright, you
It
know?
gives it a very different like essence.
Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
it feels different as well when you look at it. And
Mm-hmm.
it is also like, okay, if I'm choosing this color for my palette, how does it make me feel when I look at it? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes might be that you really want, like, there's a need for that color to be there, but does it need to be the main color or can be
Mm-hmm.
just an accent color?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, so
When you
there's
talk about the
also
feel,
like, okay, we're gonna bring it in, but we can bring it in a different way.
mm-hmm. When you talk about the feeling too, where my mind goes is like sales psychology. When people are buying the feeling, they're buying the transformation, not the modules, not the, um, is it like 6 weeks or is it like 12 weeks or is it a hybrid program or is it private program? Like people aren't, that's not what they're buying. They're buying the feeling and the transformation. So we can
Exactly.
rein in our, our pitta or the wild horses of our senses into that understanding of like the intention behind our choices, and it gives more of that containment to the um, creative process so that the information we're receiving from our brand can be translated with more precision and efficiency.
Exactly. And it works for things like I'm super, super careful, for example, with the music that I choose for my posts, because that
Mm,
also adds to the
me too.
experience. And if I started, for
Yeah.
example, I'm talking about something I'm using that whatever is on trend, great,
Hmm.
because I'm maybe gonna get the exposure, but am I gonna get the right one?
Yeah. What started happening with me that's super fun and exciting is that the songs will find me first.
It happens to me too.
And I'm like, ooh, I like this. And I've actually started creating my offers in that way, where I'll make a playlist and I'll create like a Pinterest board, and then the messaging and the structure and um, all of the other pieces from there.
How
And
cool
that,
is that?
right, that feels super, super juicy to me. Because what would used to happen for me was that I would sit down and be like, okay, I have all this energy, I have this like big mission on my heart, I have this desire, but like I was kind of like the river with no banks. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know how to start this. And whenever I tried to start from like, okay, what's the structural piece like? How many weeks? Like, who's it for? Like, all these things, I would get into that rigid pitta mind space. So I love offering that um, reframe of how we actually approach
Because
the
you're
creative.
getting more fluid, you're getting more into the water kind of way of moving.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
interesting.
Yeah, that's really been my life's journey. Um, okay, which I want to give you some time to talk about more of the woman behind the brand, but to
Mm.
just close this loop, what would be like an pacifying archetype to bring into the context that I shared with you?
A pacifying archetype.
Hmm.
Hmm. Wow. The innocent.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
what comes to mind. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
innocent, we have a feeling like, so when we think about the innocent, we think of like, I had a client that had this one, and she had such resistance to this archetype. She was like, yeah, but when someone calls it, because in Spanish, when you say it is
In
inocente, no,
French
you're
too.
innocent. Like, it's you're naive, you're uh
Hmm.
almost like silly, like
Yeah.
you don't understand.
I
It is a
think of the
very like,
fool, like
yeah,
the fool from the tarot.
exactly. No, not even that. Even like it's more like because the fool is not fool. It's not a fool, you know?
Yeah.
It's more when a child doesn't understand anything and you talk to them in that like I'm superior and I'm better than you and you don't know anything about life, that kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it is obviously connected to that innocence of the child, but looking at it more as like the children that Jesus was talking to, you know,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
he's not talking about real children. He's
Hmm.
talking about the purity of their heart.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I have chills in my legs hearing that. Yeah.
So it's connecting to and this is very kapha, the children when all the growing phase, since from babyhood to, I think it's to puberty, is all kapha,
Hmm.
because there's growth, from the earth, but it's
Hmm.
also that spongy kind of thing that brings, like the water brings, you know?
Hmm.
And so it's bringing that kind of energy of like holding space, but also, yeah, and nurturing
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
balance the sharpness of the pita, for example,
Yeah.
and to ground the vata when the vata is
Yeah.
there.
It comes back
Is
to
that
that
is
like,
that kind of innocence, the purity of heart, where it's like you know, that openness to all the possibilities, like no non-judgment, um
It's like a
looking at
playful curiosity,
exactly, like looking at and not just looking, like like really be in awe of
wonder and awe.
everything,
Yeah.
because everything is new and everything is incredible. Even the plug in the you know in the socket is incredible.
Yeah.
Is that purity of heart where everything is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, that is the golden thread. Thank you for that. Okay. In the 10 minutes that we have left, I want to expose you and give the listeners more of the backstory of the woman behind the brand. Of how did you, or rather, what did life serve you to catalyze that transformation, that rebirth from the woman who studied traditional graphic design, who is a mixologist and a yoga teacher, and then to the woman that we have had the pleasure of getting to know?
This is not that easy for me to respond to.
No.
Well, I think that I think, or what comes to me right now for some random reason, is that there's always been in me since a feeling of not belonging into
Hmm.
this earth, as in the planet, really. And I remember my Reiki teacher telling me like that she saw me like looking up and waiting for someone to come, as if I was waiting for aliens. That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah,
But that
fascinating.
is I believe that's what's led me to hold space for
Hmm.
for others that feel the same way.
Hmm.
And for me, it's always been like, because I feel that I don't belong, I also belong everywhere.
Hmm. Hmm. What a
You
beautiful
know?
reframe.
Yeah, because I've always felt like whatever you put me, I can survive and I can thrive. I
Hmm.
lived in London for a long time, for almost 7 years. And in those 7 years, I went with my partner. We lived together for 6 years. Then the partnership dissolved. And instead of going back, which would have been like the usual, I stayed because I was happy with what I was doing, and I fell in love with a person, and he broke my heart, and I still stayed. But then it was time for me to go. And all those years, I also went to New York to do my yoga training, and I went back, and I completely changed my life there because I just felt like it. When I left for New York, I had a great job as a graphic designer for a beautiful Scottish company that I adored, and they adored me, and it was great because they let me do whatever I wanted because they were so happy with me. Um, but I had to go to New York so I decided that I wanted to do that, and I left that behind because I said, guys, if I take the job with me, I'm gonna be focused on the job, and I'm not gonna be focused on the training. So it's
Hmm.
time for me to let go. And it's not because, that was me choosing something, even though it felt like, what am I doing? Because I
Hmm.
knew that when I was coming back, I would not have a job.
Hmm.
But not having a job led me to, for some reason, reconnected to a Mexican friend of mine that I met at the beginning of my stay in London, because we used to go to English classes together, and she had opened a restaurant right behind my house.
What are the odds?
Exactly. In London, which is like this small. So I connected back to him and like, I have this, I have experience. So if you ever need me to wash the dishes, I'm happy to. And she said, oh, okay, I'll keep that in mind. And 2 weeks later, I think she called me. And then she called me again. And then again, until they said like, would you stay? And I put like And I put like I said yes, but only if I can learn to do the bar, like if I can learn to do the
Oh, that's how
cocktails.
that part came about.
Exactly. Because this was me, because I had worked for an event company for a year or so, and they never let me do the bar because that was just for boys. And that got me really angry. It was like, why cannot just make things, you know? I like the bar. I'm like, I'm okay waitressing, but can I do the bar? Like the only thing they let me do was like hold trays with champagne glasses, and that was boring. You know?
Mhm. You
I
wanted
was
to
like,
get
what
your hands dirty as an
bar?
alchemist.
Exactly. And that was where I like it started where I started connecting with that alchemist kind of thing, because it
Hmm.
was all creative mixology. So I had to learn the classics as well, but it was all like we did everything. We made potions in there. Um and I stayed there for a year, and like and it was great, but yeah, I got my heart broken. I needed to leave London. And I went to Ibiza with my friend. And every time I've moved, you know, from one place to the other, I found myself like the Google little doodle that you put everywhere, you know, and they just look around and you know where they are. And I'm like, I felt like that. I felt like that every time. I'm like, you can
Uh,
drop me anywhere, you know?
yeah.
And, and not only that, and then because while I was in London with my broken heart still working in that restaurant, my teacher from New York called me, will send me an email and said, there's people in Barcelona that wants to open a yoga place. Are you? And then we
Oh.
said, like, you're like, we told them about you, and it will be great that if you're that you went there, even if it's just like to supervise and you know make sure that everything
Mhm.
is on brand, say the brand guardian again. So I went there, and I met these ladies, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm done with London. I don't want to go back there. And I had a buffer in Ibiza with my best friend for a couple months, and she helped me connect back with my feminine energy. And then I went back to London, get all my things, and came here to Barcelona because I'm originally from Madrid. So I have all my family there. And since it's been 14 or 15 years now that I left Madrid. So that's like how I started like finding my little families everywhere. I've got people all over the world now. And it was my dream to go visit them before lockdown happened. I had a huge trip planned to go
Mhm.
everywhere.
Mhm.
Um, but lockdown happened, and right before lockdown happened, I met my partner, and lockdown happened. Then we moved together for lockdown. Um, and then one thing after the other, 3 years later, I have a 3-year-old.
Life was like some roots.
Life
Some
was life,
roots
and
are
because
happening.
the other interesting thing, and when I look back, I'm like connecting dots everywhere. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
you know, I came to Barcelona. That yoga studio was on for 2 years, but you know, fast forward some other years, I get together with an English couple that want to open a yoga studio, and I have the opportunity to bring one of my favorite movement teachers to Barcelona. And I had
Mhm.
trained with them in London a couple of times because they're American. So it's the Budokan people. So I bring them here, and I do this training that like two master classes in one day, and I can't move for 3 days. And I'm like,
Oh,
I'm in a serious bad shape, but because my body is so used to yoga, then when I do something else, it's like, what?
yeah.
And they invited me, like, you know, we give you a scholarship if you can come to Germany, you train with us and you get certified as a teacher. I was like, okay, cool, I'll do that. I need to get in shape. So I started training in the beach and do some functional training with kettlebells and stuff.
Oh, my
My
partner's
trainer
obsessed
there,
with kettlebells.
oh my God, this is the best training ever. And it was like imagine the most beautiful summer. Like I spent, I started training with them end of June, and this was just before COVID. And my whole summer was like 7 a.m. workout in the beach, finish workout, take a nice swim in there, lay in the beach for like a couple of hours. Around 10 a.m., I take a shower, I go back home, spend my day, maybe teach a yoga class, and then one of my trainers, which became a good friend, said, "Don't you want to train with us? We're doing some martial art called jiu-jitsu." I'm like, "What the hell is that?" And yeah, it's come with us. It's fun. We do this on Sundays, and my girlfriend comes with us as well. She trains. I'm like, okay, so I get hooked. And when I'm like seriously thinking about joining the gym and start training martial arts again, because I had a little affair with martial arts when I was 18. This teacher doesn't have a schedule that works with my schedule, so I have to look for another gym, and I end up in the gym where my partner is teaching,
Yes.
you know and and now I have a fucking martial arts school. Like, yeah, I would have never thought of this.
Yeah. I love your orientation towards openness
Mm.
to allow life to move through you. And what I see there is this like shamanic shapeshifter essence. And I think that is a part of your brilliance that you bring forward in everything that you do. So I really wanted to name that and allow you to see that as well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
It's difficult for me to see that, to be honest.
I know.
I know. I know,
That's my like,
I just want to voice it so everyone knows that I have trouble with that, because it's not
uh,
like, because I've always felt like a chameleon, but in a bad way, you know?
that's one of the like if we're going to talk A to B transformations that I want to bring forward more in my brand. It's like a little note that I scribbled like months ago and then I kind of just forgot about it, but it's been really on my mind. So I'm glad this came through of this like transformation from chameleon, which is more of like the people pleaser who's like
Mm,
shifting and contorting themselves to other people's perspective of them. And then the other side of the transformation is the shapeshifter. And she's the one who is shifting shapes to allow life to move through her, not for other
mm.
people, but for that devotion to the mission.
Yeah, so
And
it's not so much for blending in.
yeah, that's a very exciting transformation. Okay,
Yeah.
let's reel it back in to close it out because we've gone a little bit over time
Sorry.
here. And I want to give you the floor to invite people into your world of any offers that you have on or upcoming events, anything that you're inviting people into.
Mm. I also have a Black Friday offer, but I'm extending because I don't like it's more like a I'm grateful offer.
Yes.
So because I find it a little bit n- in my business, or I don't want to lower down my price, but I want to give more.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is I am like I'm doing a 2-for-1 soulscape sessions. So you can
Huh.
get 2 soulscape sessions, which is very interesting because I haven't done this with many clients, but with the clients that I have done, and they ask me for news for an extra soulscape session or even
Mm.
more than one. We've been working not just on the brand, but the offers and the embodiment of the brand, and it has been very, very interesting. Um,
Mm.
so this is me testing this a little bit and see if that could be something that I'll do as a regular thing instead of just a one-off thing. So what I'm doing is, if for those that just want a taste of what I do, I have a bundle with the unbranded challenge, which is a little bit of shadow love for a brand.
I like to say
Looking at
shadow play.
Yeah, shadow play. Yeah, looking at all those wounds that we carry and how they express through the brand and how we can actually leverage them. But first
Mhm.
we have to identify them, and then we can play with them and integrate them, because I find that we also want to reject those parts of us instead of
Yeah.
raising them.
Mm-hmm.
And once that is done, we the bundle goes with the branding with ease, where I play a little bit with, okay, how can we make a brand out of, all this information that we have, but we don't know how to put together and then offer out in the world. And it is quite design oriented more than brand oriented, but it's a good start, before maybe entering a soulscape session.
Okay. Can you let the listeners know what the difference is between like more of a design or more of a brand?
When you're looking into, so let's start with the design part because it's the easier part, or the part that everyone knows. Like when we think about branding, we are going to think instantly in a logo, which is not really that important nowadays. But we're going to think about colors and typography.
Mm-hmm.
Typography as the font. Okay. So it comes to a little bit more of that part, like how do I choose a brand? How do I choose my color palette? How do I choose the fonts? How do I play with them? Like, why is important to have two or three max when we talk about fonts? And what is important about how and when to use which? And with the colors is the same. It's like, don't have 20 colors for your brand because then you're going to go crazy. People's going to go crazy and they're not going to recognize your brand when they see it if you're using the whole rainbow. So it goes a little bit more on towards that part of like, okay, let's create a toolbox, and how do we use the tools that we have in that box to create coherence in the visual part of the brand.
Okay.
And that's the design part. When I speak about the brand and we go in the soulscape session, and the report we get is going to inform the brand voice, the brand experience, and the brand experience is the whole thing, the whole journey from when a client or a potential client, member of your audience, maybe let's say, opens your Instagram until they're talking to their friend about the amazing experience they had with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is opening your Instagram, your posts, your emails, how you talk to them in your DMs.
Mm.
Because if they have an email that's super candid, and when you're talking to them in their DMs, like you take, you're super harsh, or not harsh, but you're much more like, it's like,
Professional.
oh, I have it's a distortion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we need to cultivate a brand perception for them to have a pleasant brand experience. And when I say pleasant, it doesn't have to mean um roses. It can
Yeah.
be it has to be a pleasant brand experience in order, like, coherent what they're coherent with their expectation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you are selling rites of passage, it needs to be potent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're selling, I don't know, cakes, well, it has to smell nice.
Yeah.
It has to smell like cake. And then you have to be, the whole thing has to be coherent. And that's when we get a little bit deeper into all the brand touch points, all the archetypal stuff, because when we are connecting with the innocent archetype, it cannot talk the same way as the magician archetype
Mm.
or the seductress archetype. But we normally work with two or three archetypes to create a beautiful blend, because that's the way it gets more personal. We're
Mm-hmm.
not just one archetype. We have 12 archetypes within us. Same
Mm-hmm.
as the doshas, right? We have the three doshas in us, but the expression of those doshas is what creates the blueprint of who we are. And when we're working with archetypes, we're not the 12 archetypes at the same time in every moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like
As simple as,
multi-dimensional,
you're
non-linear.
you're not the same person with your mother or with your friend. You're different. So
Mm-hmm.
you're playing different roles in a way. So your essence is the same, but
Mm-hmm.
your role with each person is different. And the archetypes work the same. So, but that's what we do in the Soulscape sessions. We distill those archetypes and then we can bring them into the brand. And that's gonna bring a lot of coherence into the whole experience of your brand. So it's a much deeper work. But it's a great way to start just with the visuals, for example.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that difference and painting the
Mhm.
picture in so
Yeah.
much detail as you did. So before we close out, where can people connect with you? And we'll have all this in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Now I'm mostly on Instagram, but I also have Irene Soul Branding, Irene Soul Branding, and I also have a Telegram space called Brands with Soul, and I share a little bit deeper in the Telegram group because I find it easier to to express myself more unfiltered, really, than on
Mm,
Instagram. Instagram is still a little bit of a vulnerable space for me for some reason.
mm.
So
I've
those
had
are the
that
two
too.
spaces.
I think like Telegram's more of a closed container versus Instagram is like you're in
It's
the
it's a
middle of
close
the
container,
arena
but at the
exposed to
same
the
time,
elements.
it allows more. It's more versatile, I find.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love
Well,
being able
it
to
gives.
like
I find
micro
it more.
riffs.
It's closer. I feel closer to people on Telegram than I feel on Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely. By design. Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time and your
Pleasure. Thank you.
and all the wisdom that you shared with us on this episode. And that's all I have for you today.
Thank you for having me, Shanice. I had a great time.
Me too. And thank you all for listening.